Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Iowa State Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Levi Stevenson, also the managing editor over at SB Nation's Wide Right and Natty Light. Hope everybody's having a good week. Everybody's finally is enjoying a bye week off of a win. And, it's just good to see Iowa State back in the win column for the first time in over a month. It's been it's been a long month, and this was a game this past weekend where a lot of people we weren't sure what was going to happen. Obviously, the injuries to the defense and all that were creating a really, really difficult leverage situation for Iowa State. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. As always during the show, if anybody has comments and everything, anybody has questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. Or if anybody is interested in calling in to the show, let me know. I will give you the link for that. But obviously, the big news of the weekend, Iowa State gets the win, 2017 over TCU. Going down to Fort Worth for this game is I've been vocal over the years about how much I really don't like when Iowa State plays down in Fort Worth. We never play well there, with the exception of like one time in 2019, I think is what it was, 2019, 2018, maybe. I think it was 2018. Or no, it was 20 it was 2020. It was the COVID season when Kenny Wangu had a big game. But then other like 2013 or whatever it was, TCU's first ever Big 12 game. Other than that, I would say generally does not play well in Fort Worth. Sometimes they get blown out. Sometimes it's just a horrific loss that they just couldn't get out of their own way on. And this was, you're coming into this past weekend, the defense is all banged up. We find out on Saturday morning that Jamison Patton is not Saturday morning. We found out Friday that Jamison Patton's completely ruled out. So now you're down yet another member of the secondary. And Dominic Orange is on the questionable list. We don't know what's happening with Ben Bramer. You've got a bunch of other guys. Benny Nagoya is also out. Sky's crashing down around us because the defense is so banged up that you're running out multiple freshmen, including a couple true freshmen starting games at this point. And TCU has a good offense, especially a good quarterback in Josh Hoover that had been moving the ball pretty well. Had struggled to run a little bit in the running game for some of the season, but but was always able to throw the ball. And God damn, my hat's all crooked. And it was one of those where you go in, if Iowa State could hold TCU under, I don't know, 40, that was going to be a good enough result. But they did a great job. TCU essentially was completely unable to run the football at all on Saturday. They were able to rack up some good passing yardage, some just gross passing yardage, but it obviously did not result in a lot of points. It was mostly just moving the ball between the 20s and things like that. Let me pull this up here. I'm going to pull up these stats from that game so we can all look at them on the screen. Whenever it decides to load up for me. All right, so if we look at, let's go back. Yeah, it's a good comparison here. Yeah, so TCU ends up, they end up with 113 yards, but on 3.8 yards a carry. But it was just a lot of like 3, 4, 5 yard runs. There was really no explosive runs at all mixed in there. They were just 3, 4 yard runs, and that's it. And they just weren't able to really weren't able to get much moving at all. Though, I think their longest run of the day was like a 15, 16 yard run which was the fumble that Trey Bell stripped out. Yeah, and like Brian said, yardage don't win games. That's absolutely correct. So, but what Iowa State was able to do was force turnovers. And I think the defensive player of the week for Iowa State has to go to Trey Bell, who had his best game as a Cyclone. It was awesome. And right, yeah, you got to add the punt return yardage in for sure. Haven't done the hidden yardage, um, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you with just total yardage, if you include special teams yardage, I'd have to imagine we're up in there. Uh, yeah, because Iowa State had 79 yard punt return and a 23-yard kick return. Yeah, so TCU is unable to largely move the run to move the football in the running game. But early in the game, the pressure. I mean, credit should absolutely go to the defensive line. Kenny Ziogu had a couple plays in there. Jace Gilbert had a couple plays. Dominic Orange fighting off injuries had some good plays. Was able to get some pressure in there, and the first interception, actually both interceptions, were essentially a result of the pass rush getting to Hoover and tackling him as he threw it, which resulted in a lame duck throw. First one went high over the receiver, and Trey Bell was able to be back there and pick that off. Second one went a little bit short to an out route, and Josh Patterson picked it off. And Josh Patterson's one of those freshmen that was not, I don't know what their plan was for him before the season, but I would be pretty surprised if he was like intended to be in their rotation at all. I don't even know if like David Coffey was supposed to be in there. I mean, they'd pretty much, before the injury started happening, they'd pretty much settled in on rotation of, Jontez and Quentin Taylor, and then Jeremiah Cooper and Trey Bell, or one of those, some combination of those four. Never really Cooper and Jontez at the same time, but that group of four basically. And then injuries started happening, and then David Coffey is going to come in, and then another injury happens, and now we've got Josh Patterson playing, and it's just. It's been super impressive for Josh Patterson to see. He's played a couple really good games, a couple games where he's taken just a quick step, maybe out of position, a quick step the wrong direction, maybe one or two times. But for the most part, I think Josh Patterson's been really good. He knocked a pass down against Arizona State, picked off this one against TCU. So he's off to a really good start in his career. But Trey Bell with the pick, and then later on forced that fumble, and he had a couple other deflections as well. I mean, Trey Bell was awesome. I'm going to see if I can find actually his defensive stats. So we had, let's see, there's Trey Bell. So yeah, he had 3 tackles, a pick, a pass breakup, and a forced fumble. He was awesome. Drew Sturgis had a good game, couple pass breakups of his own. And I want to say there was one other one when I played. Quentin Taylor had a good pass breakup as well. So, I was overall, it's pretty hard not to be incredibly impressed with what the defense was able to accomplish on Saturday. Right. Yes. Jace Gilbert gives me hope the edge might not suck next year, and Josh Patterson is going to be an absolute problem for us going forward. I'm really impressed. And I think you have to look at Saturday and you can't help but be impressed by the defensive performance, what they're asked to do, go up against a good offense with, 2 hands tied behind the back, missing all these guys in the personnel. Obviously, then, Will McLaughlin went down for the season a couple weeks ago, and just everything working against them. And they put up that performance where, like I said, TCU, puts up a few yards, just gross total yardage, 432, which is a fine enough game for them. But, on 319 of that through the air. But, they were under 70% completions. And most of their yards was actually after the catch. They had 144 yards there after the catch. So, not over half, but almost half of their yards was after the catch, which is just kind of a tackling thing, which that can happen. That can happen with young guys. This number for Iowa State, 1 drop here, feels incorrect. I know Chase Souls was a drop. There's a couple other ones there though that felt worse. Carson Brown's was a drop. That's not a correct number. But I believe, if I remember correctly, on TV, they showed that Iowa State had 21 drops in the season, which is an unbelievable number. The offense had another bad day for most of it up until the fourth quarter, really. Really struggled with the football through the air. Running game continued to be strong, strong, strong enough. They only average 0.1 yards per carry more. But they were able to get a couple explosive plays in the running game as well. it was good enough. The running game was good enough to just keep churning out some first downs and things like that. Where TCU was essentially kind of, I mean, they weren't selling out to stop the run, but they were dedicating a little bit more effort and attention towards stopping the run, knowing that obviously its passing game had some really bad weeks there, and running game was able to continue to be consistent. Trying to think if anybody actually broke 100 yards in this game or not. I don't. Yeah, Carson Hansen just snuck in there, 28 carries for 108 yards. My guess is that Abu Sama is still not 100% healthy. 7 carries for 30 yards. He had a couple nice little carries in there, but I'm guessing he's still not 100% healthy given the rushing attempts disparity there. But overall, a pretty good workman-like day for the running game. Carson Hansen was efficient in short yardage, and generally did a pretty good job. And obviously, Rocco had his long run as well. I think Rocco though had such a bad day up until the fourth quarter, and obviously you can see there 9 completions total. I think it was 9 of 27 if I remember correctly. I mean, he was awful. 9 of 24 for 111 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. That is like an Iowa quarterback stat line if I've ever seen one. That's like peak Spencer Petras type stat line. Really, really bad for Rocco for most of that game. Not all it was his fault. Obviously, had some receivers make some really awful plays. Had a few of them not get open. He threw the one pick over to Brad Eskelson. Wasn't a great throw by Rocco, but I was really, really disappointed with Brad Eskelson's effort on that, on the interception, on allowing it to be intercepted and not making a play on the ball. He really didn't even try to make a play on the ball. He just kind of watched it go into Bud Clark's arms. But it's, we should not, I don't want to gloss over though what they were able to do in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter was Iowa State's best quarter of football. It's the first quarter. It's like the first quarter and a half of BYU. And then it's this one as far as the best quarter of football that Iowa State's played in the last month and a half, basically, probably since Arizona. They're going into the fourth quarter. It's like a 10-6 game or whatever it was. And let's see if I can find it. Yeah. So it was a 10-6 game going into the fourth quarter. And neither team was moving the ball. It was really ugly back and just turnovers and punting and all this. And Iowa State gets the ball back with on this drive right here, you can see. Yeah. On this drive with like 8 minutes left. But it starts out, and I think that drive we'll be able to look back at that and say that was the drive. Hopefully that's the drive that was able to kind of get the offense back working again. And really, I think you can look at one play, which is Rocco's long run. I think there was a receiver open downfield, sort of, but when as he snaps the ball, the line splits out, splits off, makes a good pocket for him, and all of a sudden, just right in front of him, this wide open sea of green space opens up right in front of him. And instead of continuing to be hesitant and throw the ball downfield, he immediately tucks it and takes off. And, just keeps running, finds a great way to get up about 25 yards upfield. And it was like, it was vintage Rocco, seeing him pull that down and get that on the ground. Because Rocco's not like the fastest guy, but he's a really, really intelligent runner. He's got great vision, does a great job finding spots to pick up some extra yardage. And to me, that was the first time in a while that I'd seen Rocco look like Rocco, like where I felt like he looked like he did to begin the season when he was, a fringe Heisman candidate a fringe early Heisman candidate. And they were able to then, the next play, they turned it into Carson Hansen's long run. His 25-yard run was right on the next play. Marched down the field and then they were able to punch in the end zone with Carson Hansen there at the end at the end of the drive. It was just a good. That was the most cohesive. That was the most cohesive drive we've seen from the Iowa State offense, probably since the BYU game, but then before that the Arizona game. You know, I just it was really nice to see them put together a long scoring drive, not long time wise, but long yardage wise, scoring drive, and to see Rocco make some really good throws, make some good plays with his feet. So you do that, you force a TCU punt on the next drive, and then you get the special teams play. You get Aiden Flora doing his thing, which I'll pull up. I'll pull that up here in a second, so we can watch that. But that was the first punt return touchdown that Iowa State had since 2017 Kansas, from Trevor Ryan. Now, we would have had one against South Dakota had it not been called back. And he almost, because he ran one in and it got called back against South Dakota. Then the next punt, he almost took it back, but it just barely stepped out. So, kind of a bummer you lose out on that. But let me pull it up here. We can watch this together because it's such a good time. I don't know if that sounds very good, but this is a nice little move right there. I want to shout out to Aiden on this move here though, because he gets it and he immediately sees, okay, this blocker's pushing my guy to the outside. If I dip in and get around here, that's good. But then he sees out of the corner of his eye right here, he can see this defender coming around the backside and just that's phenomenal vision on his part. And he's just gone. I mean, that's one of those plays that's going to, that's a play that's going to live in Cyclone lore forever. It'll be anybody that was at that game will be like, yeah, we were at the game that Aiden Flora took the punt back. We'll be able to bet, look back in 5 years and say, oh, that's the game that Aiden Flora took the punt back to beat TCU. And so, awesome play. It was great to see special teams, really step up there after having a rough stretch there for a while. But then you get that play. TCU gets the ball back. I believe that next one is the fumble that ends that one there. They get that ball back right there. So they get the ball back with like 5 minutes left. And 5 minutes, 18 seconds left. They just got a run timeout. Now, the offense that's been struggling for the last month or so, you do not trust them to run 5 minutes off the clock. You barely trust them to run 2 minutes off the clock just because they're not moving the ball at all. But they step up and, they get put into like a 3rd and 6, if I remember correctly. And you've got a chance here to convert, and you have to throw the ball here. And Rocco rips one of the best throws of the entire season. Eli Green on a slant route, post route, across the middle of the field, and just throws the ball of a lifetime. Absolute laser beam, inch perfect right into Eli Green's hands. He makes a great catch. Eli was well covered, but it just did not matter because the throw was so good. And you have right there to convert. Then later in that drive, you get down to a 4th and 1 in your own territory. You're up 3 with like a minute and a half left. And you could punt. You don't like it, but you could punt. But for the first time in a while, we saw some really creative play calling. And I think this is why, I'll talk about this here in a second, why I think this is like, it's an important moment. You line up at 4th and 1 and TCU is sitting on run. sitting, and they're probably sitting on a dive or on one of those little quick pitches. They're sitting on that. So Taylor Mauser calls a fake pitch with a naked boot to the left, and it works like a charm. The fake is perfect. He sells it. Everybody sells it. And I think that's the first time I've seen Taylor Mauser call that play in his entire tenure as offensive coordinator. So, there's no film on that play. So TCU's not expecting it. The weak side defensive end is pretty much the only guy that even has a shot at tackling Rocco, but he bites down hard on that fake pitch to Hansen on the quick pitch, which obviously sold the quick pitch there. So the left defensive end bites down hard. Rocco runs free, picks up 9 yards, converts. That was with a minute 46 left. You run a couple more. You run it a couple more times. You don't quite convert, but you end up running off some more clock. You get it down to about 30 seconds, and you force TCU to drive. They got in the 16, so they had to drive 84 yards to get to get to the end zone. They needed probably 40 at least to try to have you probably needed 45 yards at least to even have a reasonable attempt at a field goal. But the defense locks down pretty well. And they're not really able to get much of anywhere. They try kind of the backyard pitch play at the end, and it doesn't, I mean, it goes for a while, but it doesn't ever really threaten per se. Doesn't really ever get upfield. And, I think it was a gain. I mean, it gained 17 yards total, but that was way short of where it needed to be. And then you win the game, and it was just it was just awesome. They closed that game out. The defense was good down the stretch. The offense executed down the stretch. There, on the last drive, there wasn't really any holding or false start penalties. They just executed well. Rocco made some great throws. He made some great plays with his legs. They picked up some important first downs. They finally, when the game was on the line, Rocco showed up. And we hadn't seen that from Rocco. He didn't really need to see it too much in the first 5 games of the season because they weren't winning comfortably, but they were playing with leads. And so there was like a couple clutch drives, but not like game winning drives like you saw against like UCF or something like that. But I really do think those last 2 drives where you see Rocco pull it down, he makes a great throw. You see a little bit of creative play calling from Taylor Mauser. I think going forward, that is your sign that the offense I think those 2 drives kind of shook some stuff loose. If they were feeling tight and rusty, I think that loosened some stuff up. We didn't really get to see it past that because the game situation didn't call for them to keep throwing the ball. The game situation was run, keep burning clock, and keep moving the chains, keep burning clock. And they did a good enough job doing that to win the game, obviously. But I really do think that if you're the offense, you still had a bad game for the first three quarters. Your offense was still bad for 3 quarters. But if you can look at that 4th quarter and say, okay, that felt normal, that felt good, that felt like how the offense should feel. You take that into your bye week. If I'm Taylor Mauser and I'm trying to get, and I'm frustrated because you've got talent in the receiver room and things just aren't quite clicking right for some reason. Rocco's a little off. The receivers are having trouble catching the ball, and you're just frustrated because it's not quite working. You can talk to Rocco. You can talk to the guys and say, "Listen, those drives felt good. Those we can build on those over the bye week. We can take that to Kansas. We can take that to Stillwater, and we can finish out, win a couple games, get to 8-4." And make it to a decent bowl game, maybe win 9 games again. Pull 9 wins out of the fire somehow. We'll have to see it against Kansas. Kansas' defense is not good. They're actually quite bad. So they'll have opportunities they should have opportunities to continue to build on that. But they played Colorado, whose defense was terrible, and they didn't look great. And they played Arizona State's defense, which is very mediocre, and they didn't look great. But those last couple drives are the most normal that this offense has looked in a month and a half. I'm excluding the first quarter and a half of the BYU game because they were really good there, but then they just immediately regressed to what they were doing. So, I think this is something they can build on, and you can use that for the last couple games of the regular season and finish this thing out strong after that really really tough stretch. And those two drives aren't going to heal Rocco Beck's injured shoulder. Unfortunately, they are not going to heal Gabe Burkle's what appears to be a fairly significant knee injury. We'll find out. I'm sure we'll find out probably tomorrow. I don't know if I don't think we found out today, but I don't know if we might find out tomorrow or something like sometime this week. We'll probably find out tomorrow night on the injury report exactly what the situation with Gabe Burkle is. But he is, I would be shocked if he's not out for the season based on just what I saw on the field. Hopefully it's not like a massive knee injury, but hopefully it's hopefully it's nothing too bad. But at this point, if it's a sprained knee ligament, you can't play him. There's no way. Ben Bramer came back and got a touchdown, which is a miracle after what we saw last week. And he played fairly well. There was one of Rocco's picks. It was a bad throw. It was too high, but Ben Bramer was able to get his hands on it. Ben will say, I should have caught that. I'm going to look at it and say that should have been a lot better throw. You should have caught that. You could have caught that, but you could have caught that. But if it was a better throw, then it would turn from a could have to a should have caught that, and probably would have turned into a did catch that. But it was a really, really terrible throw that almost went over the head of a 6'7" tight end. But you can lean on Ben Bramer. Cooper Alexander has played a few games this season, and I think he's probably played most games this season. And he's caught, the passes he's been asked to catch. He's looked pretty decent. Tyler Moore can definitely be a threat in the passing game as well. So you still have tight ends there, but losing Gabe Burkle hurts. He's really good. Offensive line, Tyler Miller went down, but he came back in the game eventually. Campbell said Caleb Bacon sounds like he's probably going to be fine and he'll be back on defense. But anyways, you have enough to build on going forward. The receiver room, I'm not sure what it's gonna take there. I don't know if it's. I think they've got talent in the room. I really don't think it's an issue of they don't have the guys. Brett Esselson has made some really great catches this year. He can catch deep balls, but there's times where he just loses concentration in the short yardage stuff. Chase Soul, it seems like if he's not contested some or he's not making some crazy catch, then he loses concentration. Kind of like Hakeem Butler a little bit, where Hakeem would drop the easy ones for some reason. And he'd make some of the most unbelievable catches you've ever seen. But he would drop some really, really easy ones. And it kind of seems like Chase Soul is in that same spot. Eli Green seems pretty reliable. I'm not sure why he doesn't get more playing time. I haven't seen Xavier Townsend drop anything major either. I kind of am surprised that Xavier Townsend and Eli Green aren't getting more targets. I'm not really sure exactly what the deal is there, but Dom Overby hasn't played much recently, and that's because he's been struggling with drops. Brett Eskelson has probably been your most consistent receiver so far, but he's still not been great. Still dropping some passes and things like that. But you've got enough. I think you've got enough on those last couple drives to build on and just try to loosen up a little bit. Try to, not play so tight and, not be in your own head and as part of the psychological part of this, where the offense, the receivers could just very, very well be just kind of in their own head on a lot of this, where you've got a wide open catcher Chase Soul and he's just thinking about it too much. Kind of, not any different than like in basketball where you miss an open shot because, it was so open that your mindset changes. You don't shoot it, in rhythm and things like that. The too open thing. Maybe that's what happened with Chase Soul. But guys on offense are getting open, which is a good, they're fine. They're able, sometimes they're not able to get open because they're asked to run certain routes that they're just apparently not good at getting done. But there are plenty of other times where they're finding receivers that are wide open and they're just still not getting completed. I think they will get it figured out. I hope it's this season. I hope it's next game. I don't know if it will be the season. If it's just they need another off season to get in rhythm. You would hope that it doesn't have to take a full season for wide receiver transfers to get accustomed to the game, especially ones that just came from within the FBS. I mean, like Jaden Higgins took a while, but he was coming out of the FCS. He wasn't even coming out of this division of football. So, it wasn't a shock necessarily that it took him a second to get up to speed. But, Chase Sowell had played Power 5, previously Power 5 football, and then played FBS football at East Carolina. It shouldn't take him this long to get up to speed. And I don't know why it is. I don't know why he's had drop issues, whatever it is. But I'm optimistic that they will get something figured out, whether it's the current guys stepping up or maybe they rotate in some other guys. But either way, I'd like to see them build on that over the bye week. So no game to preview this weekend, obviously, because Iowa State's on a bye week, and we'll have Kansas next week that we'll preview. So, I mean, it'll be a little bit shorter show today, but we can talk a little bit about basketball as well, who had a big win the other night last night over Mississippi State up in Sioux Falls at the Pentagon. It was an incredibly impressive win. I saw lots of social media reaction from national analysts that were gushing about Iowa State last night. Mississippi State shot like 40% from three, 50% from the floor, and Iowa State shot 23% from three. And despite that shooting disparity, was able to consistently maintain a 16 to 20 point lead the entire game. Milan Momcilovic and Josh Jefferson only combined for 7 points in the first half, and they scored 54. I mean, it was a team effort. They were up and down. They were hard to guard. They had lots of guys doing interesting things. Dominic Nelson was really good. Played ahead of Dominic Plata had some nice plays. Jamarian Bateman had a good game defensively and hit a couple threes. Tamin Lipsey was awesome. 25 points. And I think he had 5 assists, 4 assists, something like that, and a few steals. Tamin Lipsey looked in control. He looked well paced. It was just a dominant performance and something to look at when you're like going into Vegas. You're like, holy shit, this Iowa State team can play. They're if they can put 96 points on the board, without either Josh Jefferson or Milan Momcilovic, having a really big game and shooting 20%, 24% or 23% from three, that's notable. If Iowa State scores 94 points in a game, they're not losing. The defense is too good to lose a game with 94 points. So, or 96 points. So really excited to see everything. I'm really excited to see them going forward. They've got one more game before Vegas, Stonehill College. I don't even know if I could tell you where Stonehill College is, but Stonehill College is in Easton, Massachusetts. That's a long travel for a team to just come here and get their ass beat, I guess. But, either way, I think they just moved up. Oh, they just moved to Division I a few years ago. So that explains why I've never heard of them. Anyways, I think we'll wrap it up for this week. A little bit shorter, like I said, obviously, because there's no game next week in the preview. And really not much recruiting going on right now. I think we're kind of in a little bit of a dead period recruiting-wise. So not really a lot else going on. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Appreciate Brian for keeping the chat active. We'll be back again next week to preview the Kansas game and get ready to close out the season, hopefully with a couple more wins. So, like I said, Pooh in the short show. I'm sorry, there's just not a lot to talk about, man. I mean, it's just I would say it's in the win column. We're having a good time, and we're back to having a better time, I should say. I mean, if you guys got questions, I'm more than happy to answer them and keep streaming here. But right now, we're just kind of chilling. So we'll be back again next week to preview the Kansas game. Maybe talk a little bit more basketball. I don't know. We'll see if there's any recruiting news at all. But yeah, next Tuesday, same time, 7 p.m. Central, right here on the Voice of College Football Network for Iowa State. See you guys again next Tuesday. Thanks.